The morning fog hung low over the small mountain village of Ravenscrest, where Sarah Mitchell had worked at the Copper Kettle Diner for 3 years. At 24, she possessed a voice that could make grown men weep and children stop their crying, though she had never performed anywhere beyond the local church choir. Her auburn hair caught the early sunlight as she walked to work, humming a melody her grandmother had taught her years ago. The Copper Kettle sat at the edge of town, where the cobblestone streets gave way to winding forest paths. Sarah loved the location because it offered views of the ancient mountains that surrounded their valley. Local legends spoke of creatures that lived in those peaks, but Sarah had always dismissed such stories as folklore meant to keep children from wandering too far into the wilderness. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Sarah tied her apron around her waist, filled the coffee pots, and began preparing for the breakfast rush. The diner's owner, Mrs. Henderson, had trusted Sarah with opening duties ever since she proved herself reliable and hardworking. The familiar routine brought comfort to Sarah's life, which had been anything but stable growing up in the foster care system. Around 7:30, the first customers began trickling in. Old Mr. Garrett ordered his usual black coffee and wheat toast. The construction crew from a new bridge project filled their usual corner booth, discussing the day's work ahead. Sarah moved between tables with practiced efficiency, her melodic voice adding warmth to every interaction. "More coffee, Tom?" she asked the crew foreman, already reaching for the pot. "Always, Sarah. You know, my wife keeps asking when you're going to audition for that talent show in the city. Says someone with your voice shouldn't be hiding in a diner." Sarah smiled politely, the same response she gave whenever anyone mentioned her singing. "The city's not for me. I like it here just fine." The truth was more complicated. Sarah had auditioned once, 3 years ago, traveling to the state capital with dreams of making it as a professional singer. The experience had been devastating. The judges had been cruel, calling her style outdated and her appearance too plain for modern audiences. She had returned to Ravenscrest with her confidence shattered, vowing never to put herself through such humiliation again. Around 9 o'clock, after the breakfast rush had died down, Sarah noticed something unusual through the diner's large front windows. A small figure was moving along the tree line at the forest's edge, about 200 yards from the restaurant. At first, she thought it might be a lost child, but something about the way it moved seemed different. "Mrs. Henderson," Sarah called to the kitchen, "I think there might be someone who needs help out by the woods." The older woman emerged, wiping flour from her hands. Probably just hikers getting an early start, though it is a bit odd for this time of year. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The figure appeared to be limping, stopping frequently, as if exhausted. When she squinted through the window, she could swear she saw a glint of scales in the morning sunlight, but that seemed impossible. "I'm going to take a quick look," Sarah announced, untying her apron. "If it's a hurt animal, maybe I can help." Mrs. Henderson nodded, used to Sarah's compassionate nature. The young woman had brought injured birds to the diner's back room more times than she could count, nursing them back to health with patience and care. Sarah grabbed a small first aid kit from behind the counter and stepped outside into the crisp mountain air. The figure had moved closer to the edge of the parking lot, and as Sarah approached, her breath caught in her throat. What she saw defied everything she thought she knew about the world. A small dragon, no larger than a house cat, lay exhausted beneath a large pine tree. Its scales were a deep emerald green with hints of gold around the edges, and its wings were folded tightly against its body. The creature's breathing was labored, and Sarah could see scratches along its hide, as if it had been fleeing through brambles for hours. Sarah's first instinct was to run, but something in the dragon's large, amber eyes stopped her. There was an intelligence there, and more importantly, there was pain. The creature looked up at her with the same expression she had seen in countless abandoned animals over the years, a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Easy there, little one," Sarah whispered, slowly crouching down several feet away. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon hatchling made a sound that was part whimper, part musical note. It was the most beautiful and heartbreaking sound Sarah had ever heard. Despite its obvious exhaustion, The creature tried to back away from her, but it was too weak to move more than a few inches. Sarah noticed that one of the dragon's wings appeared to be injured, hanging at an odd angle. There were also what looked like burn marks along its side, though she couldn't imagine what could have caused such wounds on a creature that she assumed would be fireproof. "You're hurt," Sarah said softly, setting the first aid kit aside for the moment. "And you're scared. I understand that feeling." Something about the dragon's distress reminded Sarah of her own childhood, when she had been moved from foster home to foster home, never knowing if the next place would be safe. The vulnerability in the creature's eyes was achingly familiar. Without really thinking about it, Sarah began to hum. It was the same melody her grandmother had sung to her during her brief but cherished time in the woman's care before illness took her away. The tune had always brought Sarah comfort during her darkest moments. The effect on the dragon was immediate and remarkable. The creature's labored breathing began to slow, and the fear in its eyes gradually gave way to curiosity. Sarah continued humming, then began to add words, a lullaby about finding safety in the storm, about being brave when the world seemed frightening. As she sang, the dragon's posture relaxed. It stopped trying to retreat and instead seemed to lean slightly toward her voice. Sarah had always known her singing had an unusual effect on people and animals, but she had never experienced anything like this. The dragon appeared to be not just listening, but understanding the emotional content of her song. "That's better," Sarah murmured between verses. "You're safe now. Whatever happened to you, whatever you're running from, you're safe here." She began to inch closer, still singing softly. The dragon watched her approach, but didn't try to flee. When she was close enough to touch the creature, Sarah extended her hand slowly, palm up, the way she would with a frightened dog. The dragon sniffed her fingers with a small, reptilian nose, then, to Sarah's amazement, nuzzled her palm with surprising gentleness. Its scales were warm to the touch, with a texture like smooth river stones. "You're just a baby, aren't you?" Sarah whispered. "Where's your family?" The dragon made another musical sound, this one tinged with what could only be described as longing. Sarah's heart broke at the sound. Whatever had happened to this creature, it was alone and frightened. She carefully examined the injured wing, noting that while it was clearly painful, it didn't appear to be broken. The burn marks were more concerning, looking like they might be infected. Sarah had no idea how to treat a dragon, but her basic first aid knowledge would have to suffice. "I'm going to clean these wounds," she told the dragon, speaking as she would to any injured animal. "It might sting a little, but it'll help you heal." The dragon seemed to understand, remaining perfectly still as Sarah carefully cleaned the burns with antiseptic wipes. It flinched occasionally, but never tried to pull away or snap at her, which seemed remarkable for a wild creature. As she worked, Sarah continued to sing softly. The dragon appeared to find her voice soothing, closing its eyes and almost purring, a sound like distant thunder mixed with wind chimes. Sarah had never heard anything so beautiful. "There," she said, applying small bandages to the worst of the burns. "That should help. Now about that wing." The wing injury was trickier. Sarah could see that it wasn't broken, but the muscles were clearly strained. She fashioned a small sling from gauze, gently immobilizing the wing against the dragon's body. Throughout the process, the creature remained cooperative, watching her face intently. "You're very brave," Sarah told the dragon, "and very smart. I can see it in your eyes." The dragon responded with a series of soft chirps and clicks that almost sounded like it was trying to communicate specific information. Sarah found herself wishing desperately that she could understand what the creature was trying to tell her. "Are you hungry?" she asked. The dragon perked up at this question, which Sarah took as a yes. "I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, okay?" Sarah hurried back to the diner, her mind racing. She needed to feed the dragon, but she had no idea what dragons ate. Mrs. Henderson looked up as she burst through the door. "Find what you were looking for?" the older woman asked. Sarah hesitated. How could she possibly explain that she had found an injured dragon, Hatchling, in their parking lot? "It's a hurt animal. Something unusual. I need some food for it." Mrs. Henderson's expression grew concerned. What kind of animal? Should I call animal control? No, Sarah said quickly. No, I can handle it. It's just very skittish. I don't want to scare it away before I can help it properly. The older woman studied Sarah's face, clearly sensing there was more to the story. What kind of food do you need? Sarah thought quickly. Maybe some raw meat? And some fruit? I'm not sure what it eats. Mrs. Henderson disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a plate containing strips of raw beef and some apple slices. Be careful, Sarah. Wild animals can be unpredictable, even when they seem tame. Sarah nodded and hurried back outside, where she found the dragon exactly where she had left it. The creature's eyes followed her approach, and it made a happy chirping sound when it saw the food. Let's see what you like, Sarah said, setting the plate down within the dragon's reach. The dragon sniffed both options carefully, then began to eat the apple slices with surprising delicacy. It ignored the meat entirely, which struck Sarah as odd. She had assumed dragons would be carnivorous, but this little one seemed to prefer fruit. So you're a vegetarian dragon, Sarah mused. That's interesting. After the dragon had finished eating, it looked up at Sarah expectantly. She realized it was waiting for her to sing again. The request was somehow clear despite the language barrier. Sarah settled into a more comfortable position on the ground and began to sing a different song, one about friendship and trust, about finding family in unexpected places. The dragon curled up beside her, its head resting against her leg, purring contentedly. They sat together in comfortable silence after Sarah finished the song. The dragon's breathing had returned to normal, and its eyes, while still alert, no longer held the desperate fear from earlier. Sarah gently stroked its scales, marveling at how soft they were despite their apparent durability. I wish I knew your name, she said. I wish I knew where you came from. The dragon looked up at her and made a series of musical sounds that almost seemed like an attempt at speech. Sarah listened carefully, trying to parse meaning from the tones. Luna, she guessed, picking out what sounded like repeated syllables. Is that your name? The dragon's eyes brightened, and it repeated the sound with obvious excitement. Sarah laughed with delight. Luna it is then. Nice to meet you, Luna. I'm Sarah. Luna seemed to approve of this introduction, nuzzling Sarah's hand affectionately. The trust between them was already remarkable, considering they had only met an hour ago. As the morning wore on, Sarah found herself reluctant to leave Luna alone. The dragon was clearly intelligent and emotional, and she worried about what might happen if it wandered off before its injuries healed properly. But she couldn't stay outside indefinitely, Mrs. Henderson would eventually need her back in the diner. I have to go back to work, Sarah explained to Luna. But I'll check on you during my breaks, okay? Try to rest and let those wounds heal. Luna seemed to understand, settling down in the soft grass beneath the pine tree. Sarah made sure there was water available nearby and promised to return with more food in a few hours. Back inside the diner, Sarah found it almost impossible to concentrate on her work. Her mind kept wandering to the extraordinary creature waiting outside. She had always believed in magic, despite the world's attempts to convince her otherwise, but actually encountering it was overwhelming. During her lunch break, Sarah returned to find Luna exactly where she had left her, though the dragon perked up immediately upon seeing her. Sarah had brought more fruit and vegetables, which Luna accepted gratefully. How are you feeling? Sarah asked, gently checking the bandages. The wounds looked better already, which seemed impossibly fast, but was a relief nonetheless. Luna responded with a complex series of sounds that Sarah was beginning to recognize as the dragon's way of talking. While she couldn't understand the specific meaning, she could tell from Luna's tone and body language that the creature was feeling better, but was still worried about something. What's wrong? Sarah asked. Are you scared about something? Luna looked toward the mountains, making a low, mournful sound. Then, she looked back at Sarah with an expression that clearly conveyed longing and sadness. You miss your family, Sarah realized. You're lost, aren't you? Luna's response confirmed Sarah's guess. The dragon was separated from its family somehow, and despite its injuries healing, it was heartbroken by the separation. Sarah felt a deep empathy for Luna's situation. She knew what it was like to be alone in the world, to long for a family that seemed impossibly out of reach. Without thinking about it, she began to sing again, this time a song about hope, about never giving up even when the path home seemed unclear. As her voice rose and fell through the melody, Sarah noticed something unusual happening in the sky above them. Clouds were gathering in a pattern she had never seen before, swirling in perfect spirals around the mountain peaks. The wind picked up, but instead of feeling threatening, it seemed to be carrying her voice further than should have been possible. Luna noticed the changes too, lifting her head and staring intently at the sky. The dragon made excited sounds, as if recognizing something significant in the unusual weather patterns. Sarah's song seemed to be having an effect beyond just comforting Luna. The very air around them felt charged with energy, and Sarah could swear she heard echoes of her voice coming back from the mountains, as if the peaks themselves were amplifying her song. "What's happening?" Sarah whispered, but Luna was too focused on the sky to respond. High above them, something large moved between the clouds. At first, Sarah thought it might be an airplane, but the movement was too organic, too purposeful. As the shape descended, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A massive dragon, easily the size of a small airplane, was flying directly toward them. Its scales were the same emerald green as Luna's, but with more pronounced gold markings that glinted in the afternoon sunlight. Its wings were enormous, casting shadows across the entire clearing as it approached. Sarah's first instinct was to run, but Luna made a joyful sound and tried to struggle to her feet despite her injuries. The approaching dragon wasn't a threat, it was family. The large dragon landed with surprising grace about 50 yards away, its massive form somehow managing not to disturb the surrounding trees. It let out a sound that was part roar, part musical call, and Sarah felt the vibration in her bones. Luna responded with excited chirps and clicks, clearly trying to communicate what had happened. The large dragon, who Sarah realized must be Luna's mother, turned her attention to the human who had been caring for her child. Sarah had never felt so small or so vulnerable. The mother dragon's eyes were the same amber color as Luna's, but they held the weight of centuries and wisdom that made Sarah feel like she was being judged by something far beyond her understanding. For a long moment, the three of them remained frozen in tableau, the injured hatchling, the protective mother, and the human caught between them. Sarah could feel her heart pounding, but she refused to run. Luna needed her, and she wouldn't abandon the little dragon now, regardless of the consequences. The mother dragon began to move closer, each step measured and deliberate. Sarah forced herself to remain still, though every instinct screamed at her to flee. As the massive creature approached, Sarah could see the intelligence in her eyes, the careful assessment of the situation. Then, to Sarah's amazement, the mother dragon did something completely unexpected. She lowered her enormous head until she was at Sarah's eye level and made a sound that was unmistakably gentle, almost grateful. The message was clear. She recognized that Sarah had helped her child. Luna chirped excitedly, crawling closer to her mother while still favoring her injured wing. The reunion was touching to witness, the love between parent and child transcending species barriers. But as Sarah watched the tender moment between mother and child, she realized that this was likely goodbye. Luna's family had found her, which meant the magical encounter was coming to an end. Soon, Luna would fly away with her mother, and Sarah would return to her ordinary life at the diner. The thought filled her with unexpected sadness. In just one day, Luna had awakened something in Sarah that she had thought was lost forever, a sense of wonder, of possibility, of connection to something larger than herself. As if sensing Sarah's emotions, Luna looked up at her with those expressive amber eyes and made a soft, musical sound. It was a sound of gratitude, of affection, of goodbye. Sarah knelt down and gently stroked Luna's scales one last time. "Be safe," she whispered. "Find your way home." But as the mother dragon examined her child's injuries and the makeshift bandages Sarah had applied, something unexpected began to happen. The massive creature's expression grew thoughtful, then amazed. She looked from her child to Sarah and back again, as if seeing something that surprised her. The mother dragon began to make complex sounds, clearly communicating with Luna in their own language. Luna responded animatedly, pointing her small claws towards Sarah and making excited noises. Sarah couldn't understand the conversation, but she could tell that Luna was explaining something important about their encounter. The mother dragon's gaze kept returning to Sarah with what looked like growing respect and curiosity. Finally, the mother dragon approached Sarah directly. The woman forced herself to remain calm as the enormous creature leaned down and sniffed her gently. Then, in a gesture that took Sarah's breath away, the dragon nuzzled her hand with the same gentleness Luna had shown. It was an acceptance, a recognition of the bond that had formed between Sarah and her child. But more than that, it seemed like an invitation or perhaps a test. The mother dragon stepped back and made a series of sounds that were clearly directed at Sarah, though she had no hope of understanding their meaning. Luna chirped excitedly and limped over to Sarah, pressing against her leg. "I don't understand," Sarah said helplessly. "I wish I could, but I don't speak dragon." The mother dragon seemed to consider this problem. Then, she did something that would change Sarah's life forever. She began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that harmonized perfectly with the melodies Sarah had been singing to Luna. It was an invitation to sing together, to bridge the gap between species through music. Sarah hesitated for only a moment before joining her voice to the dragons, creating a harmony unlike anything that had ever existed in their valley. As their voices blended, Sarah felt something shift in the world around them. The very air seemed to shimmer with possibility, and she could sense that this moment was the beginning of something extraordinary. But what that something might be, she wouldn't discover until the dragon's true intentions became clear. For now, there was only the music, the connection, and the knowledge that her life would never be the same again. The harmony between Sarah's voice and the mother dragons created something magical in the mountain air. As their songs intertwined, the clouds above them began to part, revealing patterns of light that seemed to dance in response to their music. Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her chest, different from anything she had experienced before, as if her voice was connecting to something ancient and powerful. When the song naturally came to an end, the mother dragon regarded Sarah with what could only be described as wonder. Luna chirped excitedly at her mother, clearly trying to explain something important. The massive dragon listened carefully to her child, occasionally glancing at Sarah with growing amazement. Then, the mother dragon did something unprecedented. She opened her great maw and spoke, not in dragon language, but in words Sarah could understand, though her voice was like distant thunder mixed with wind through mountain peaks. "Human child." The dragon's voice resonated through the clearing. "My daughter tells me you sang to heal her pain. She says your voice carries the old magic, the kind that has been lost to both our kinds for many generations." Sarah's mouth fell open in shock. She had not expected the dragon to speak English, let alone to discuss magic as if it were a simple fact. I don't understand," Sarah stammered. "I was just trying to help her. I've always sung to herd animals. It seems to calm them." The mother dragon's eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge. "What is your name, singer?" "Sarah. Sarah Mitchell." "Sarah Mitchell," the dragon repeated, as if testing how the name felt. "I am Thessarian, guardian of the northern peaks, and this is my daughter Luna. You have done more than simply calm an injured animal. You have awakened something that was meant to remain dormant." Luna limped closer to her mother, still favoring her injured wing. Thessarian examined the bandages Sarah had applied, gently peeling them back with surprising dexterity. Beneath the bandages, the burns had healed completely, leaving not even a scar on Luna's emerald scales. "Impossible," Sarah breathed. Those wounds were infected this morning. The old magic works through song, Thessarian explained, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. There are those among your kind, and mine, who possess the gift of healing through melody. Such individuals are rare beyond measure. I have lived for 800 years, and you are only the second human I have met who carries this power. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. There's no such thing as magic. I mean, I know you're a dragon, but healing through singing? That's impossible. Thessarian's expression grew patient, the way a teacher might look at a confused student. Child, look around you. My daughter's wounds have healed completely. The clouds parted when we sang together. Even now, the plants around us grow greener in response to the magic that flows through your voice. Sarah glanced down and gasped. The grass beneath their feet was indeed more vibrant than the surrounding area, and flowers that hadn't been there before were beginning to bloom in small clusters around them. This can't be real, Sarah whispered. Reality is far stranger than your kind has been taught to believe, Thessarian replied gently. The world was once full of magic, Sarah Mitchell. Dragons and humans worked together, using song and melody to heal the land and protect all living things. But that time ended long ago, when fear and misunderstanding drove our kinds apart. Luna chirped softly, and Thessarian nodded as if her daughter had made an important point. Luna believes you are the one spoken of in the old prophecies, the dragon continued. The bridge singer who would one day reunite our kinds through the power of music. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what she was hearing. I'm just a waitress from a small town. I'm not special. I'm not magical. I'm definitely not prophetic. The truly gifted rarely recognize their own power, Thessarian observed. Tell me, Sarah Mitchell, have you always been able to calm others with your voice? Have animals always responded unusually to your singing? Sarah thought back through her life. It was true that her voice had always had an unusual effect on people and animals. Crying babies stopped their tears when she sang lullabies. Injured animals would calm instantly upon hearing her voice. Even the most difficult customers at the diner seemed to soften when she hummed while taking their orders. I thought everyone could do that, Sarah admitted quietly. Few humans retain any connection to the old magic, Thessarian explained. Most have forgotten it ever existed. But you, Sarah Mitchell, carry the bloodline of the ancient singers. The gift runs in your family, though it often skips generations. My grandmother, Sarah whispered suddenly. She used to sing to me when I was little. She said our songs had power, that they could heal hearts and mend spirits. I thought she was just being poetic. Your grandmother carried the gift as well, Thessarian confirmed, though perhaps not as strongly as it flows through you. Luna's healing is proof of your power's strength. Sarah looked down at Luna, who gazed back at her with adoring amber eyes. The little dragon had curled up next to Sarah's feet, purring contentedly. It was hard to believe that this trusting creature had been near death just hours earlier. What does this mean? Sarah asked. If what you're saying is true, if I really do have some kind of magical ability, what am I supposed to do with it? Thessarian was quiet for a long moment, her ancient eyes studying Sarah carefully. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that suggested she was about to change Sarah's life forever. There's a choice before you, Sarah Mitchell. You can return to your life as it was, knowing now that your gift exists, but choosing not to explore its full potential. Many who carry the old blood choose this path, finding contentment in small magics, healing minor hurts, bringing comfort to those in need. Sarah waited for the alternative, though she suspected she already knew what it would involve. Or, Thessarian continued, you can come with us to learn the true extent of your abilities. In the high peaks of these mountains, there are others like you, humans and dragons who work together to preserve what remains of the old magic. They could teach you to use your gift for greater purposes than you have ever imagined. Leave Raven's Crest. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. This is my home. I have a job, responsibilities. You have a gift that could change the world, Thessarian countered gently. But the choice must be yours. The old magic cannot be forced upon anyone. It must be freely embraced. Sarah's mind reeled with the implications. Leave her simple life at the diner to pursue something she barely understood? It seemed impossible, terrifying, and yet she thought about her life in Raven's Crest. While she was comfortable and safe, she couldn't deny that she often felt restless, as if she were meant for something more. The failed audition 3 years ago had crushed her dreams of a singing career, but this was different. This wasn't about fame or recognition. This was about purpose. Could I visit first? Sarah asked hesitantly. Before making such a big decision, Thessarian's expression grew sympathetic. I understand your hesitation, child. Such a choice should not be made hastily. Yes, you may visit our community. Spend time learning about your heritage before deciding whether to commit to this path fully. Luna chirped excitedly at this news, clearly hoping Sarah would agree to come with them. The little dragon's enthusiasm was infectious, and Sarah found herself smiling despite her nervousness. How would I even get there? Sarah asked practically. I assume it's not accessible by car. Luna, and I will carry you, Thessarian replied, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Sarah's eyes widened. You want me to ride on a dragon? Unless you prefer to climb several thousand feet of rocky terrain, Thessarian said with what might have been draconic humor. The thought of flying terrified Sarah, but it also thrilled her in a way she hadn't expected. When would she ever have another opportunity like this? Even if she decided not to pursue the magical training, the experience of flying on a dragon would be something she would treasure for the rest of her life. I need to let Mrs. Henderson know I'll be gone, Sarah said, surprising herself with her decision. She's depending on me for tomorrow's shift. Time moves differently in the high peaks, Thessarian explained. What seems like days to you, there will be only hours here. You will return before your next shift is scheduled to begin. This magical explanation of time dilation should have increased Sarah's skepticism, but instead, she found herself accepting it as easily as she had accepted Luna's existence. Perhaps encountering real magic made other impossible things easier to believe. All right, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. I'll come with you, but I need to grab a few things from inside first. Thessarian nodded approvingly. Take what you need, but travel lightly. The journey requires freedom of movement. Sarah hurried back into the copper kettle, where Mrs. Henderson was preparing for the dinner rush. The older woman looked up with concern when Sarah burst through the door. Is everything all right, dear? You've been outside most of the day. Sarah struggled with how to explain her situation. She couldn't exactly tell Mrs. Henderson that she was about to fly away on a dragon to learn magic from an ancient community in the mountains. I need to take some time off, Sarah said carefully. There's been a family emergency. Mrs. Henderson's expression immediately shifted to sympathy. Of course, Sarah. Take all the time you need. Is there anything I can do to help? No, but thank you. I'll be back tomorrow, I think. Maybe the next day at the latest. Sarah gathered her purse and a light jacket, her hands shaking slightly with nerves and excitement. She paused at the diner's threshold, looking back at the familiar space that had been her world for 3 years. Would she feel the same about this life when she returned? Outside, Thessarian and Luna were waiting patiently. The mother dragon had positioned herself so that Sarah could climb onto her back using her lowered wing as a ramp. Luna was perched on her mother's neck, chittering excitedly about the upcoming flight. Are you certain about this? Thessarian asked as Sarah approached. Once we begin this journey, your life will never be quite the same. Knowledge cannot be unknown. Sarah looked into the dragon's ancient eyes and saw wisdom, kindness, and a deep understanding of the choice she was making. I'm sure, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Climbing onto Thessarian's back was easier than Sarah had expected. The dragon's scales provided natural handholds, and her movements were careful and deliberate, ensuring Sarah felt secure. Luna chittered encouragement as Sarah settled herself between the ridges on Thessarian's back. Hold tight to the ridges in front of you, Thessarian instructed. "And do not fear the height. I have carried passengers for centuries without losing one." Sarah gripped the bony ridges along Thessarian's spine, her knuckles white with tension. "I'm ready," she called, though she felt anything but ready. Thessarian's takeoff was surprisingly smooth. Instead of the jarring leaps Sarah had expected, the dragon's powerful wings lifted them into the air with graceful, measured beats. Sarah's initial terror gave way to wonder as the ground fell away beneath them. Raven's Crest looked like a miniature village from above, the copper kettle a tiny speck beside the winding road. The sensation of flight was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced, exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. The wind whipped through her hair, and she had to close her eyes against the rushing air. "Look, Sarah," Luna called back to her, her young voice filled with joy. "See how beautiful the world is from up here." Sarah forced herself to open her eyes and immediately gasped in amazement. The mountain landscape spread out below them like a living map, with forests of deep green, crystal streams cutting silver paths through valleys, and peaks that touched the clouds themselves. She had lived in these mountains her entire adult life, but had never truly seen their majesty until now. As they flew higher, Sarah began to notice things that seemed impossible from her ground-level perspective. There were structures built into the mountainsides, not human construction, but something far more organic and beautiful. Bridges that looked like they were grown rather than built spanned between peaks, and gardens cascaded down cliff faces in impossible terraces. "Is that where we're going?" Sarah called to Thessarian, pointing toward the mysterious structures. "That is the Eyrie," Thessarian replied, her voice carrying clearly despite the wind. "Home to the last community of bridge singers and their dragon companions." As they approached the Eyrie, Sarah could see figures moving along the mountain paths, both human and dragon forms working together in harmony. Gardens bloomed with plants she had never seen before, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. Luna chirped excitedly, clearly happy to be home. Other young dragons emerged from caves and perches to greet them, their scales flashing in every color of the rainbow. Adult dragons perched on ledges and bridges, watching their arrival with curious eyes. Thessarian landed on a wide platform carved from the living rock. The landing was so gentle that Sarah barely felt the impact. As she slid down from the dragon's back on shaking legs, she found herself surrounded by the most remarkable group of people she had ever seen. There were humans of all ages, from children who looked no older than 10 to elders whose eyes held the weight of centuries. What they all had in common was an aura of contentment and purpose that Sarah had rarely encountered in the outside world. Many of them had dragon companions, some large and majestic like Thessarian, others small and playful like Luna. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes stepped forward to greet them. She wore robes that seemed to shift color in the mountain light, and when she spoke, her voice carried the same musical quality that Sarah recognized in her own singing. "Welcome, bridge singer," the woman said, bowing slightly. "I am Melody, the current speaker for our community. Thessarian sent word of your arrival through the wind songs. We are honored to meet one who carries the old blood so strongly." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the formal greeting. "I'm just Sarah. I don't really understand what's happening here." Melody's smile was warm and reassuring. "Understanding will come in time. For now, you're our guest. Come, let us show you the wonders of the Eyrie, and perhaps you will begin to see the path that brought you here." As Melody led Sarah through the incredible mountain community, Sarah found herself marveling at every turn. The architecture was beyond anything she had imagined. Living rock shaped by magic into flowing, organic forms that seemed to grow from the mountain itself. Gardens thrived in every available space, tended by both human and dragon hands. "How long has this place existed?" Sarah asked as they walked along a bridge that offered breathtaking views of the surrounding peaks. The area has been home to bridge singers for over 2,000 years, Melody replied, though her numbers have dwindled as the old magic faded from the world. At one time, there were dozens of such communities throughout the mountain ranges of the world. Now, we are one of only 3 that remain. They paused at a vast open area where Sarah could see people and dragons working together on various tasks. Some were tending to injured animals, their healing songs creating visible auras of golden light around their patients. Others were crafting items that seemed to glow with inner fire, while still others worked in gardens where plants grew at impossible speeds. "This is incredible," Sarah breathed. "How do they make it look so easy?" "Practice," Melody said simply, "and acceptance of their gifts. Many of our residents came to us just as you have, uncertain of their abilities, unsure of their place in the world. The old magic reveals itself differently in each person, but all who carry the bloodline can learn to use their gifts with proper guidance." Luna had stayed close to Sarah throughout the tour, occasionally chirping commentary about various sites. The little dragon's obvious affection for Sarah had not gone unnoticed by the community members they encountered. Several people commented on the remarkable bond between them, especially given how recently they had met. "Dragons are excellent judges of character," Melody explained when Sarah mentioned the comments. "Luna's immediate trust in you speaks well of your heart. Dragons cannot be fooled by false intentions or hidden cruelty." As the day progressed, Sarah found herself relaxing into the magical environment. The airy felt like a place out of time, where the impossible was commonplace, and wonder lurked around every corner. She watched children no older than 12 healing injured birds with their voices, saw teenagers working alongside ancient dragons to tend vast gardens, and observed adults creating beautiful objects that seemed to pulse with living energy. But what struck her most was the sense of belonging that permeated the community. Everyone had a place, a purpose, a way to contribute their unique gifts to the greater good. It was everything Sarah had dreamed of finding, but had never believed could exist. As evening approached, Melody led Sarah to a comfortable guest chamber carved into the mountainside. The room was simple, but beautiful, with a window that offered stunning views of the sunset, painting the peaks in shades of gold and crimson. "Rest now," Melody advised. "Tomorrow, if you choose, we will begin teaching you about your gifts. But tonight, simply absorb what you have seen and heard. Let your heart guide you toward the path that feels right." Alone in her chamber, Sarah stood at the window and watched the last light fade from the mountains. Luna had been taken to rest with her mother, though the little dragon had been reluctant to leave Sarah's side. The separation felt strange after spending the entire day together. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. This morning, she had been a simple waitress with a pleasant voice and a quiet life. Tonight, she was something she still didn't fully understand, a bridge singer with the potential to learn real magic. The choice before her was enormous. She could return to Raven's Crest tomorrow and resume her safe, predictable life. Or she could take the leap into the unknown and discover what her gifts might become with proper training. As she drifted off to sleep in the magical mountain community, Sarah's dreams were filled with songs that could heal the world and voices that bridged the gap between species. But she also dreamed of Mrs. Henderson worried about her absence, of the regular customers who depended on her cheerful service, of a simple life she would be leaving behind. When morning came, Sarah would have to make a decision that would determine not just her own future, but potentially the future of the ancient magic itself. Sarah woke before dawn to the sound of distant singing. The melodies were unlike anything she had ever heard, complex harmonies that seemed to weave together voices from across the entire airy community. She rose and went to her window, where she could see dragons and humans beginning their daily routines, many of them adding their voices to the communal song that welcomed the sunrise. Luna appeared at her window moments later, hovering on wings that showed no sign of yesterday's injury. The little dragon chirped happily when she saw Sarah awake, then flew in graceful circles around the chamber, clearly eager to begin the day. "Good morning to you too," Sarah said with a laugh. "How's your wing feeling?" Luna responded with a series of musical notes that somehow conveyed perfect health and boundless energy. Sarah was beginning to understand the dragon's emotional communication, even if she couldn't translate specific words. A gentle knock at her door announced the arrival of breakfast, fresh fruit, warm bread, and herbal tea that tasted like morning sunshine. The young man who brought the tray introduced himself as Marcus, one of the newer bridge singers who had arrived at the Eyrie only 2 years earlier. "Melody asked me to show you around this morning," Marcus explained. "She thought you might like to see how the training works before you make your decision." Sarah appreciated the thoughtful approach. "That would be wonderful. I'm still having trouble believing any of this is real." Marcus smiled knowingly. "I felt the same way when I first arrived. I was a street musician in Seattle, getting by playing guitar on street corners. I thought I was just good at reading crowds and knowing what songs would make people happy. I had no idea I was actually using magic to influence emotions." As they walked through the Eyrie, Marcus shared his story. He had discovered his abilities when he accidentally healed a sick child with a lullaby, an incident that had frightened him so much he had stopped playing music entirely. A dragon had found him months later, drawn by his unexpressed magical energy, and had brought him to the mountains. "The hardest part was accepting that everything I thought I knew about the world was incomplete," Marcus confided. "But once I embraced the training, I found a sense of purpose I had never experienced before." Their first stop was at the Healing Gardens, where Sarah watched in amazement as bridge singers worked to restore injured animals and sick plants. An elderly man named David was singing to a deer that had been caught in a trap, his voice literally drawing the infection from the wound and replacing it with healthy tissue. The process was beautiful and peaceful, nothing like the sterile medical procedure Sarah was accustomed to. The healing songs work by connecting to the life energy that flows through all living things, Marcus explained as they watched. Different types of injuries respond to different melodies. It takes years to learn all the traditional healing songs, but most bridge singers also develop their own unique variations. Next, they visited the workshops where other types of magical crafting took place. Sarah watched a woman named Elena creating wind chimes that actually controlled air currents, their melodies directing gentle breezes wherever they were hung. Another artisan was growing crystal formations by singing to them, each note encouraging the minerals to take on specific shapes and colors. "Everyone finds their own specialty," Marcus noted. "Some focus on healing, others on growing things, some on creating magical objects. A few, like Melody, become teachers and community leaders. The magic adapts to your personality and interests." They climbed higher into the Eyrie to observe a training session for newer students. A group of children and teenagers, both human and young dragons, were practicing basic harmony exercises under the guidance of an instructor. Sarah could see the magic working as their voices joined together. Flowers bloomed around them. The air shimmered with golden light, and even the rocks beneath their feet seemed to pulse with life. "Could I really learn to do that?" Sarah asked, watching a girl who couldn't be older than 15 creating small rainbows with her voice. "Your gift is already stronger than most," Marcus replied. "Luna's complete healing yesterday would have taken most of us weeks to accomplish. With proper training, you could become one of the most powerful bridge singers in generations." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Sarah had always known her voice was special, but she had never imagined it could literally change the world around her. Their tour continued to the dragon nurseries, where Sarah met several other hatchlings who had been born at the Eyrie. Unlike Luna, who had been hatched in the wild, these young dragons had grown up surrounded by bridge singer magic from birth. They were remarkably intelligent and articulate, able to hold conversations in both dragon speech and human languages. "The bond between our kinds grows stronger with each generation," explained Thessarian, who had joined them at the nurseries. "These young ones will know cooperation and friendship from their earliest memories." They will help heal the ancient rift between dragons and humans. Luna had been playing with the other hatchlings, but immediately flew to Sarah's shoulder when she spotted her. The little dragon's preference for Sarah over her own kind was touching, though it also made Sarah feel a weight of responsibility. "She's imprinted on you," Thessarian observed with amusement. Dragon young sometimes choose a human companion when they encounter a particularly compatible magical signature. It's considered a great honor among our people. Sarah gently stroked Luna's scales, feeling the warm purr that vibrated through the little dragon's body. "What does that mean for Luna if I decide not to stay?" "Dragons live for thousands of years," Thessarian replied thoughtfully. "If you choose to return to your old life, Luna will respect that decision. But she will always consider you family. And perhaps when you're older and ready for a different kind of life, she will find you again." The thought of leaving Luna behind was unexpectedly painful. In just 2 days, Sarah had grown more attached to the little dragon than she had to any creature in her life. The idea of walking away from that bond felt like abandoning a piece of herself. As the day progressed, Melody took over Sarah's education, introducing her to the theoretical aspects of bridge singer magic. They sat in a beautiful library carved from living crystal, surrounded by books and scrolls that contained centuries of accumulated knowledge. The magic works through intention and emotion channeled through sound, Melody explained. Your voice becomes a conduit for the life energy that connects all things. The more clearly you understand what you want to accomplish, and the more deeply you feel the emotion behind it, the more powerful your magic becomes. Sarah learned that there were different schools of bridge singer magic: healing, growing, crafting, protection, and communication. While most practitioners specialized in 1 or 2 areas, the most gifted could work across all disciplines. "Your work with Luna yesterday showed aptitude for healing," Melody noted. "But your voice also carries undertones that suggest strong potential for growth magic and communication. That's an unusual combination that could make you particularly valuable to our community." They spent hours discussing the theory behind magical singing, and Sarah found herself fascinated despite the complexity of the subject. Everything made sense in a way that her failed music career never had. This wasn't about entertainment or commercial appeal. This was about connecting to something fundamental and using that connection to make the world better. As afternoon turned to evening, Melody led Sarah to a secluded garden where they could practice some basic exercises. Luna accompanied them, eager to participate in whatever Sarah was learning. "Start with something simple," Melody instructed. "Choose a plant that looks a bit wilted and sing to it with the intention of helping it grow stronger." Sarah selected a small flower that was drooping in the mountain air. She had no idea what melody might work best, so she simply opened her heart to the plant and let her voice flow naturally. To her amazement, the flower immediately began to straighten, its colors growing more vibrant as she sang. "Excellent," Melody praised. "Now try something more complex. See if you can encourage new growth." Sarah focused her intention on the flower's potential for new blooms and adjusted her melody accordingly. Tiny buds began to appear along the plant's stem, swelling and opening into perfect blossoms as her voice continued. "This is incredible," Sarah breathed as she finished the song. "I can actually see it working." "You have remarkable natural ability," Melody confirmed. "Most students take weeks to achieve what you just accomplished in minutes. Your grandmother must have been very powerful indeed to pass along such strong gifts." As they walked back toward the main community areas, Sarah felt a sense of rightness about the magic that she had never experienced with traditional singing. This felt like the purpose she had been searching for her entire life. The reason her voice had always seemed different, always carried more power than it should. But as they approached the evening meal, Sarah was reminded of the life she had left behind. She thought about Mrs. Henderson, probably worried about her mysterious absence. She thought about the regular customers who depended on her cheerful service, the simple routines that had provided stability in her chaotic life. The evening meal at the Eyrie was a community affair, with long tables set up in a great hall carved from the mountainside. Dragons and humans shared the space comfortably, their conversations mixing dragon speech with human languages in a polyglot symphony of friendship. Luna stayed close to Sarah throughout the meal, occasionally chirping comments about the food or the other diners. After dinner, the community gathered for what they called the evening harmonies, a time when everyone joined their voices together in songs that blessed the Eyrie, protected it from harm, and strengthened the bonds between all who lived there. Sarah found herself swept up in the incredible music, her voice blending naturally with the chorus of hundreds. As the harmonies reached their peak, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The magic wasn't just flowing through her voice, it was becoming part of her, changing her in ways she could feel but not fully understand. When the songs finally ended, she felt more connected to the world around her than she ever had before. "How do you feel?" Melody asked, as the community began to disperse. "Different," Sarah replied honestly. "Like I'm becoming someone I was always meant to be." Melody nodded knowingly. That's the magic awakening fully. Once it begins, it never stops growing. The question is whether you're ready to embrace that growth or if you need more time to adjust to the idea. That night, Sarah sat by her window again, watching the stars above the peaks. Luna curled up in her lap, purring contentedly as Sarah absently stroked her scales. The decision she faced felt enormous, not just about changing her life, but about accepting a fundamental shift in her understanding of reality. A soft knock at her door interrupted her contemplation. Marcus entered with a warm smile and 2 cups of the soothing mountain tea. "Melody thought you might want to talk," he said, settling into a chair near the window. "The first night is always the hardest for deciding. How did you know you were making the right choice?" Sarah asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I asked myself what I would regret more, taking a leap into the unknown or spending the rest of my life wondering what I had missed. The fear of missing out on something extraordinary was stronger than the fear of change. What about the life you left behind? Friends, family, responsibilities?" "I visit Seattle sometimes," Marcus replied. "Magic doesn't cut you off from the outside world. It just gives you abilities most people don't have. Some bridge singers choose to live part-time in both worlds. Others, like me, find their true home here and visit the outside world occasionally." Sarah considered this. She had assumed the choice was all or nothing, but perhaps there were more options than she had realized. "Could I really do both? Keep my job at the diner, but come here to train?" Thessarian mentioned that time moves differently here, Marcus said. "You could spend weeks training and return to find only hours have passed in Ravenscrest. Many of our students start that way, gradually transitioning as they become more comfortable with their abilities." This possibility changed everything for Sarah. She didn't have to abandon her old life immediately. She could explore her gifts while maintaining the stability and connections that mattered to her. The next morning brought Sarah's final decision-making moment. Melody had arranged for her to participate in a group healing session, working alongside experienced bridge singers to help a severely injured eagle that had been brought to the Eyrie during the night. Sarah joined a circle of 5 other healers around the magnificent bird, which lay unconscious with a broken wing and several deep gashes for what appeared to be a fight with another predator. As the group began their healing songs, Sarah felt her voice naturally find its place in the harmony. The magic that flowed through their combined voices was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. She could feel the eagle's pain as if it were her own, could sense the broken bones and torn flesh that needed repair. Her voice became a conduit for healing energy that she guided with instinctive precision. The transformation was miraculous to witness. Broken bones realigned, wounds closed without scars, and the eagle's breathing strengthened with each measure of their song. When the bird finally opened its eyes and struggled to its feet, testing wings that worked perfectly, Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "This is what we do," Melody said softly as the eagle took flight, circling overhead in a display of gratitude before soaring away toward its mountain home. We heal what is broken, nurture what needs to grow, protect what requires defending. Your gift could help save countless lives. Sarah looked around at the faces of her fellow healers, people who had found their true purpose and were using their extraordinary abilities to make the world better. She thought about Luna, who chirped excitedly from her perch on Sarah's shoulder. She thought about the incredible community that had welcomed her without question. Then, she thought about Mrs. Henderson, worried about her missing employee, about the Copper Kettle Diner, where people depended on her reliable service, about the simple, predictable life that had given her stability when everything else was chaos. I want to do both, Sarah said finally. I want to train here and learn about my gifts, but I also want to maintain my life in Raven's Crest. At least for now. Is that possible? Melody's smile was warm and understanding. Of course, child. The magic doesn't require you to abandon everything else that matters to you. We'll create a training schedule that allows you to honor both parts of your life. Thessarian, who had been listening from nearby, nodded approvingly. A wise choice. Many of the most powerful bridge singers maintain connections to the outside world. You could be a bridge between communities as well as between species. Over the following weeks, Sarah established a routine that seemed impossible, but worked perfectly thanks to the time differential magic of the area. She would work her regular shifts at the Copper Kettle, then Thessarian would transport her to the mountains for intensive training sessions that lasted days, but took only hours from the perspective of Raven's Crest. Her abilities grew rapidly under expert guidance. She learned dozens of healing songs, mastered techniques for encouraging plant growth, and began experimenting with the creation of magical objects. Luna remained her constant companion during training, the little dragon's presence somehow amplifying Sarah's natural abilities. But perhaps the most important change was how Sarah's gift began to affect her work at the diner. She found herself unconsciously using gentle magic to ease her customers' troubles. A soft humming that calmed angry patrons, a whispered lullaby that soothed crying children, healing songs disguised as casual melodies that helped people with minor aches and pains. Mrs. Henderson noticed the changes immediately. I don't know what's different about you lately, Sarah, but our customers have never been happier. People are driving from 3 towns over just to eat here. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Sarah smiled, knowing she couldn't possibly explain the real reason for the diner's new popularity. Her magic was subtle enough that customers attributed their improved moods and mysteriously healed minor ailments to the restaurant's atmosphere rather than anything supernatural. The integration of both lives wasn't always easy. There were times when Sarah felt torn between her two worlds, when the extraordinary community of the area made her regular life feel mundane by comparison. But there were also moments when the simple human connections at the diner grounded her in ways that pure magic couldn't. 3 months into her dual existence, Sarah faced her first real test. A terrible accident on a mountain highway brought multiple casualties to the small Raven's Crest Hospital, which was completely overwhelmed. Dr. Peterson, the town's only physician, was struggling to treat injuries that exceeded both his resources and expertise. Sarah made a decision that would forever change her relationship with her hometown. With Luna hidden nearby, she offered to help at the hospital, claiming she had some first aid training. What she actually did was use her healing songs disguised as gentle humming, moving from patient to patient and channeling magic through her voice. The results were extraordinary. Patients who had been near death stabilized rapidly. Broken bones healed faster than medically possible. Infections cleared overnight. Dr. Peterson called it miraculous, attributing the recovery rates to some combination of excellent emergency care and inexplicable good fortune. But Sarah knew the truth, and more importantly, some of the patients began to remember the strange dreams they had experienced during their recovery. Dreams of voices that sang away their pain, of golden light that filled their bodies with strength, of a young woman whose humming had somehow made everything better. Word spread through Raven's Crest about the mysterious healing phenomenon at the hospital. People began to whisper about Sarah, though none could quite explain why they associated her with the miraculous recoveries. Some claimed her voice had a special quality that made them feel better just by listening to it. The attention made Sarah nervous, but Melody assured her during her next training session that she had done the right thing. The old magic works best when it serves others, the elder Bridge singer explained. Your instinct to help when help was needed shows that you understand the true purpose of your gifts. As Sarah's first year of training progressed, she began to understand that her dual existence was not a compromise, but a strength. Her connections to the outside world allowed her to serve as a literal bridge between the magical and mundane communities. She could help people in Raven's Crest in ways they might never fully understand, while her experiences in the town informed her magical practice in valuable ways. Luna had grown considerably during this time, no longer a small hatchling, but a graceful young dragon whose scales had deepened to a rich emerald shot through with veins of gold. The dragon's bond with Sarah had only strengthened, and Luna had begun to show her own magical abilities, particularly in the area of emotional healing and communication between species. The partnership between Sarah and Luna had become something of a legend at the Eyrie. Together, they could accomplish healing feats that impressed even the most experienced bridge singers. Their combined abilities seemed to amplify each other in ways that the magical community had not seen in generations. On the first anniversary of their meeting, Sarah and Luna sat together in the same clearing where they had first encountered each other. The pine tree where the injured hatchling had taken shelter now bore a small plaque marking the spot where the bridge singer and the healing dragon began their partnership to restore the old magic to the world. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked Luna, stroking the dragon's neck. Bonding with a human instead of living a purely dragon life. Luna's response was a complex melody that Sarah had learned to translate as, "We are more together than we could ever be apart. This is the path we were meant to walk." Sarah nodded, understanding completely. Her life had become more complicated since that fateful morning when she heard a crying hatchling, but it had also become infinitely more meaningful. She had found her purpose, her true family, and her place in the world. As they sat together watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah began to sing. It was a new song, one that came from the depths of her heart. A melody about finding family in unexpected places, about bridges built between different worlds, about the magic that happens when someone chooses love over fear. Luna's voice joined hers, creating a harmony that carried across the valley and up to the peaks where the Eyrie community was beginning their evening songs. Other voices joined them from the mountainside, bridge singers and dragons adding their voices to the spontaneous composition. The song grew and swelled until it seemed to encompass the entire mountain range, a celebration of the bonds between species, the power of music to heal and unite, and the courage it takes to embrace the extraordinary possibilities that life offers to those brave enough to listen for the magic in everyday moments. When the song finally ended, Sarah smiled and rose to begin the journey back to Raven's Crest, where Mrs. Henderson was expecting her for the morning shift. Luna would accompany her part way, then return to the Eyrie for her own training. Tomorrow would bring new customers to serve, new songs to sing, and new opportunities to use her gifts to make the world a little brighter. The waitress who had once believed herself to be ordinary had become something far more extraordinary than she had ever imagined. But perhaps the most magical thing of all was that she had managed to do it without losing the simple human connections that kept her grounded and gave her magic its true purpose. As she walked toward town, humming softly with Luna gliding overhead, Sarah reflected on how her grandmother had been right after all. Their songs did have power to heal hearts and mend spirits. They could even change the world, one voice at a time, one note at a time, one act of kindness at a time. The old magic was returning to the world, carried by bridge singers like Sarah, who understood that the greatest power comes not from grand gestures, but from the courage to use extraordinary gifts in service of ordinary love. And somewhere in the mountains, a community of humans and dragons continued to sing together, keeping alive the ancient harmonies that would one day heal the rift between all living things.